Hello 169. Of course, our journey is never complete in around Zambia. Of course, if you didn't go to any corner of this particular country, we've taken you places, and this is the Lower Zambezi National Park. We've besieged this place today to talk about conservation with the Conservation Lower Zambezi. All the activities in around our campaign today is actually based on this particular fact. This space is non-GMA. It is strictly wildlife, and this is the Lower Zambezi National Park. Welcome to 169. Right, so this is a non-GMA area actually, which is the wildlife now, okay, without people. If it's people, it's then the tourists that are coming to actually get to view the animals. Now, he's from Conservation Lower Zambezi, and of course, being here, this is Lower Zambezi National Park, okay? I'm sure that's going to be the confusion a little bit for my personals out there compared to myself. Yeah. If we hear of Conservation Lower Zambezi and then we hear of the Lower Zambezi National Park, yeah. What's the relationship here? What's the difference?
All right, so the difference is Conservation Lower Zambezi is a non-government organization. Okay. That was actually formed in 1994, so about over 15 years now. The whole organization was actually formed in by the tour operators within the Lower Zambezi National Park and Chiao Game Management Area. In the 90s, because of high poaching in the area, the tour operator that had already set up their camps both in the GM and the park brought their heads together and decided they wanted to protect the resources of this area, and decided to form an organization that would actually pump in their monies to try and protect these resources. So in 1994, these two operators came on board and formed this organization that now we are calling Conservation Lower Zambezi, where they've actually become, board members that are actually funding in the project to operate. The whole purpose was actually to work mainly for anti-poaching with DNPW, which was actually ZAWA by then, but this time it's called Department of National Parks and Wildlife, to support them with things like rations, patrol equipment, first aid and vehicles and resources with vehicles to try and deploy these guys. So currently this Conservation Lower Zambezi is an NGO that is actually being funded by these two operators within the valley here.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So how's been the progress from the time you actually set up this? Let's take a look at the recent statistics, in regards to your achievement as in regards to conservation itself. Is it yielding positive results?
Well, it is. I think if you look at the results, or rather the records of poaching that we currently have now compared to what we had in the 90s, even before the organization was actually formed, I wouldn't probably say there is good reduction as we would expect. As you know, I think poaching has actually become a big thing, not just within Lower Zambezi, but I think countrywide or Africa wide, where Lower Zambezi is, inclusive. We are seeing quite a lot of, I think, demand for ivories on black market, and so much elephants being killed at the end of the day. But I think I'll probably say what we have right now and compared to what we had 20 years ago, there's definitely some sort of like reduction. But also with change of poachers with new tactics of how to approach the situation.
So in here, which animals are more prone to?
Elephants for their ivories and also for meat, and as you may be aware, this Lower Zambezi National Park and Chiao Game Management Area is closer to Lusaka and Great East Road, which is sort of like good, I think, with the issues of road networking and transporting these contrabands to town, which is sort of like the high market for ivory demand and also meat.
So why conservation if it's food in the home?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Why conserve food?
Well, look, if our forefathers didn't actually conserve these natural resources, we wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have this job today. So I think it's one for the benefit of a country. In terms of tourism sector, I think it brings job creation to a country like Zambia. Good example, I think, with all these lodges that we have within the valley here, I think we're talking of over 800 people that have been employed by these tour operators. So definitely it's a good thing to do because you are creating job opportunities, I think, for Zambia, but also for the local people. Yeah.
Is the concentration more in the Lower Zambezi National Park itself as opposed to the game management area? Looking at the influx of people obviously found around that side, and they wouldn't actually get to see an animal, just a pass by. And here maybe there's skepticism because of none of the availability of population of people, that one could not walk alone in here and poach.
Well, I think with wildlife, I don't know if I'm actually getting your question right.
Absolutely.
But with wildlife, what it is, I think these animals are sort of like found everywhere, both the GMA and the park. Yeah. And the concentration for conservation Lower Zambezi is not mainly for the park. It's both where wildlife is actually found. We are trying to cover up, I think, most of the park that any other person or any other organization would actually want to expand their operation area, but I think what would actually limit you is your resources. Currently we are putting our effort mainly into the Lower Zambezi National Park, but also moving into the GMA, and also you consider other open areas like Rufunsa, which is on the far eastern side of the park. So we are sort of like limited to what we can do. We would want to expand more even to Rano area, which is north of the park here, but I think resources would actually try and limit you from how far you can go in terms of your operations. Yeah.
Right, so the former ZAWA, which is DNW,
Department of National Parks and Wildlife.
At the moment, they have what they call rangers.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you supplementing your efforts in supporting them in what they're doing, or you have your own sort of style that you are coming into to sort of help? Are you providing personnel even, or it's the same?
So what it is, because of manpower, I think again in DNPW, in 2013. It's not just Lower Zambezi, don't get me wrong. This issue of manpower, I think, is not just Lower Zambezi, it's all over the country. I think Zambia, ZAWA is actually low in terms of manpower. And what we did as an organization, we started working with DNPW, supporting them with things like rations, equipment, transportation, first aid and everything to equip them to be able to man this area. But we still realized there was still need for manpower to sort of like boost up with what they had. So in 2013, as an organization, we got some funding to train 20 village scouts that would actually employ under Chiao Community Resource Board, which is sort of like an institute that is actually working also in line with MOU signed in between the Chiao Resource Community Board with ZAWA. And these guys are sort of like employed by the Chiao Resource Board, and we as an organization, we are only taking up the role of paying these guys. But they're actually monitored and being supervised by DNPW. So whatever activity that they do, they're doing it in accordance with Department of National Parks.
So you're not throwing any human resources?
No. It's just giving them the officer that we've actually trained to be supervised by the Department of National Parks, but employed by Chiao Community Resource Board, and we come in terms of paying for their salaries.
All right. Is there any special methodologies applied to sort of curb the vice of poaching?
Well, more strategies. I mean, we apart from just adding up to manpower in the Department of National Parks, again, we also in 2016 brought in a unit that we're calling a dog unit now, just to sort of like try and see how we can combat, poaching from different angles. So we brought in 2 dogs and trained 400 that are actually working with these dogs, and these dogs are there to sort of like, they're well trained in sniffing in ivories, meat, they can sniff, and all things like firearms and things like that. And from the time the project started in 2016 to date, we are seeing quite a number of results. The biggest is where the dogs actually managed to sniff in an AK-47 that was actually used for poaching in a bus. So you can see a lot of things like meat being recovered from vehicles and people's homes and stuff. So it's mainly to try and sort of like combat the poaching level that we are having. But apart from also just the K9 unit, we are also currently in the process of an ongoing training right now actually for special rapid response, where we're just going to have special people that are going to be trained as a unit with their own vehicle that are going to be special just to respond to information on the ground, on informers, a network, poachers coming into the field and all that. So that is mainly just to sort of like adapt to what we already have in the system to work with the Department of National Parks.
So this is a routinely scheduled, or perhaps you have special sort of timings in a season or year when you have to really go all out to in collaboration with the
It's throughout the year, throughout all the time with the K9 guys. They're always operational from within Chiawa Game Management Area, Ruano, and also Lufonso on the far end of the eastern part of the park, and we are also intending to do the same thing with rapid response once they're set and ready to go.
Okay, strategically positioned in certain areas, or
there are many going to be based within Chiawa, sort of like central area, but operating from all these open areas like Ruano and but based within Chiawa Game Management Area for monitoring purposes.
All right.
Yeah.
There is rationale in a park. This is an animal's home, space or zone. We have to be here just for minutes. And that's your 169. We have to go. So right, just to give a clear picture of what we're actually trying to depict out of the whole mapping around the Lower Zambezi, well, let me say the game management areas also and the catchment area for conservation Lower Zambezi. This is now, I'm sure, where it all borders, as in the bone of contention. From which particular angle or area we're moving in. Obviously, he's able to tell us where we stood at that particular time, where is the gate for the Lower Zambezi National Park, and of course, which area is more concentrated. If not, just about the whole rationale of their particular space here. So I don't know how the key here is sort of interacting. There's gray, green, there's what roads now we're seeing here. There's places like that. Yeah, it's all a big cocker, but I don't know where we're going to begin from. Where are you exactly here?
Okay, so currently we are here.
Oh,
this is where Conservation Lower Zambezi is, and where we went area on, where it said the Chongwe River that demarcates Lower Zambezi National Park and Chiawa Game Management Area. This is the river now that comes down to the conference here. The edge, exactly, yeah. So a few meters from COZ to the conference. And what you're seeing in green on a bigger picture here is now our Lower Zambezi National Park. And what you're seeing here, where we are with COZ also with this all in grey here, is our Chiawa Game Management Area. And up there you see we've got Ruano Game Management Area, and on the far eastern end of the park we have Lufonso Game Management Area, which now demarcates Zambia and Mozambique on the far end. And area one, I think in my explanation I actually said we are working, I think, on law enforcement on the game management area, which is Lufonso National Park, and also with Chiawa here. But apart from just law enforcement, also we work with schools around Lower Zambezi National Park, which are schools in Chiawa GMA, and also we have Chinyunyu, this area here, and we've got also Lufonso schools around there. So the environmental education manager, Besa Kaoma, brings in schools. We're working with about 65 schools around the whole Lower Zambezi National Park, and at the end of the year we've got like 3,600 kids that we bring in here at the center to come and train and gain the experience from boat crews and game drives into the park. Okay, so with schools we've got like Chiawa. The schools are not actually showing here, but you can see these are just names of the lodges. But we've got like Chiawa school, which is in this area. We've got other schools along Chongwe area, and we've got other schools along. Exactly. Those that are actually interested, but also in conservation clubs. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Nice.
So this environmental educator, Mr. Besa Kaoma, has actually formed in conservation clubs in all these schools around Lower Zambezi National Park. So those students within their schools, Besa goes in for outreach programs where he would actually get in. He carries in his gen set, TV, shows them, what like movies, and teach them about protecting of these resources. And then at the end of the day, there are also teachers that are actually helping him to implement, the conservation menus in total schools where they would sit in for an exam, and if they qualify, those students now are selected to come down here at CLZ for 4 days tour, where they'll sit in a class. We've got a classroom there where they'll sit in a class, but also apart from just activities in class, they go for boat cruise and also game drive activities, which is more practical side of it. Exactly, yeah. So we also expose them via boat cruise when they go on the river for boat cruise, but also they go in for activities like game drive, like we just did. I'm also sort of like a product of this, and for me to be here now as an operations manager, my first sort of like tour, or rather trip or journey with CLZ started from me coming here at CLZ as a student in Chongororo Club. I then being brought up in an area like this one, which is a rural setup where you're told wildlife is your enemy because they're seen to be grazing your crops every now and then. But I didn't really have interest in wildlife until the time I came down here at CLZ, and then had the privilege to sort of like look at this elephant on a different angle apart from just seeing it grazing your crops and stuff. So it's definitely sort of like putting in an impact, I think, in the coming generation. To say,
so you're closer to CLZ, and then there's other schools here that are very far, from where you are located. And I guess the terrain here is a national park.
Yeah.
So I mean, how is the interaction now? Do you can like reach out to this, Anawezi, there's Old Mono, there's in fact Luangwa, and
yeah, which is quite expensive. The side of expenses, I think, where it comes in, because with environmental education now, the only way we can bring in all those schools from Luangwa there, you have to drive via Lusaka, and this is greatest road that you're seeing down there all the way up to Luangwa Boma, and we're talking about over 600 kilometers to just to cover up and bring the school kids, and then another trip to take them back. Yeah, so that's how we sort of like interact with Luangwa down there. But in terms of operations and ant poaching side, we've got some roads that we can still use the Land Cruisers to drive up to Luangwa, which is sort of like small vehicles. But with school kids, you have it, you need to bring them in a big bus like Losa, which you can't drive through the park because of the roads. Yeah, because of the terrain itself. Yeah. Okay, now looking at the calendar, that's the curriculum. Obviously, kids who have their own, for school, like 3 months in school. When is the period that you have to train here? It doesn't really conflict with their time to be in class, also to be. Yeah, no, he has his own calendar that he's actually using with school, that is actually which is also approved by the Ministry of Education through the DEPS office with Chongwe and these other schools. That doesn't sort of like distract what the schools are actually doing. So they come in usually to be on Fridays, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, then on Tuesday they're actually back. And usually when people are in examination classes and they're going to sit for exams, even though they're qualified to come in for a tour, those would actually be put aside because we don't want to distract them from sitting for their exams. Sounds more like a big project. It is. It's more than just conserving the wildlife at the end of the day. There's employment attached to it. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, even as you protect these natural resources, you may be able to protect natural resources, with law enforcement, officers being seen on the ground and arresting people who are illegally selling ivories and meat and stuff. But at the end of the day, on the other side, you need a component like environmental education, where you're going to train the coming generation to be able to understand why they need to protect these resources, because as they grow, they won't be able to protect something that they don't understand and why they should protect it. So I think the component for environmental education comes in to be very vital too. Not even in the sense that because it will be next to it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I keep on saying, if our forefathers didn't protect them, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't find, wouldn't be able to see these elephants that we're seeing today. Well, I'm glad to have a clear picture of what really is actually going on in here. Yeah. Obviously, our next stop would be to see. Unfortunately, they're not dogs. The sniffing dogs. There'll be more about it after 6 so all right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. You're most welcome. So there you have it. This is what is called or known as an interpretation room. To interpret it, I wouldn't interpret it exactly before seeing what's exactly inside in there. But of course, I've got my gentleman here who's going to be taking us around as we interpret some of the findings out from Lower Zambezi conversation. So this really actually appears to be like a museum, or maybe say a lab of some kind. But this gentleman here, Rogers, will be able to actually get to interpret what the depiction at the door sign there is really. What this space all about, Roger?
This space is called the interpretation room.
Yeah.
So this is where we keep all the items that which we confiscate from the fields
Right.
All those that which we have confiscated, all those items are kept here. These items are kept here for education purposes. So for these items to be here, we have written permission from the Department of National Parks and Wildlife, so that we can have all these items you can see around me. I'm sure you can see we have the ivories there, which are which is the real thing, which we are supposed to have, with of course permission from the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. Yeah, so I can run you through all these items here. As you can see here, we have the skull for the crocodile.
Was that
so
part
all
of
this
confiscation, or it's just meant for purposes of?
This is kept for the purposes of education.
Education. All right.
Sure, it is kept for the purpose of education. But as you can see, we have the shell of the tortoise there. That was from a confiscated tortoise.
Okay.
Yeah, we also have the skull of an elephant there. That was taken from the national park for the sake of education. We also have quite a number of items there. As you can see, we have the ostrich eggs, we have the ivory, we have the skull of a lion. Yeah, we all keep all those items. The spikes of the porcupine.
Could that lion be? How big?
That lion could be as old as 15 years.
Does the shell tend to shrink as in the skull as years go by? It looks so small.
Yeah, it's quite so small, but that lion that skull is for a lioness.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's for a lioness. So the size of the skull of the lion, the male lion and the female lion, is quite a difference in the two. And as you can see, there are quite a number of skulls there for different animals, porcupine, and all those things.
Okay.
So this room is mainly used by two groups of people. I'm sure my colleague might have touched on something to do with the safari guide training.
Absolutely.
So the safari guides training all come to Conservation Lower Zambezi. We host them for a period of about 3 weeks to do their exams. So they are brought in this room. All these stickers you are able to see where we have labeled, for instance, here we have a crocodile skull. All these stickers are removed during the exams.
Oh, okay.
So now those students, they are told to identify what sort of an animal does this skull come from, represent. So all these stickers you see once removed, the guides will go through each and every sticker. As you can see, there are some prints here. So all these labels are removed during the guides training.
Okay.
So that they're able to identify to say which print is for which animal.
Right.
So this room basically serves two purposes, as I said.
So this is the interpretation.
The interpretation, yeah, that's actually that's the interpretation
itself,
where you are presented with something and then you identify.
Okay.
As you can see on the table here, we have these small axes. So these were confiscated from the field. So now during the exams, we subject our students to identify the use of such items. Okay. We have the muzzle loading guns in the corner there, which we are all confiscated. Okay. These knives, of course, you can tell by the size of the knife that the guys who are using it, we are really meant serious business.
Yeah, so this is like for skinning.
Yeah, this is for skinning,
cutting, and all that kind.
As you can see, it's quite been here for some time now.
Yeah, so it's
by the time it was acquired, it was really sharp.
Quite sharp. Okay.
Yeah, it was quite sharp. So this is used for skinning and ripping off meat from the bones.
From the bones.
Sure.
There's ruthless there. Okay, so then the axe is obviously there for killing.
Yeah, for cutting. Like for instance, those who come in to hunt like big game such as elephants, their main target is not for meat or anything. They target mainly the ivory. So they come so equipped, the knives, the axes, they even have bigger axes, bigger than these ones you're able to see on the display.
Okay, it's quite strange to find even a shell of a tortoise being poached for what?
Yeah, there are these superstitions and beliefs by some people to say the tortoise shells are used for medicinal purposes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which I can neither confirm or refute, but there are these rumors in the villages and surrounding areas.
Okay, quite an interpretative sort of interpretation that you really wanted to find out. That's about the 169, and thanks to Conservation Lower Zambezi, It takes a twist all the time and the time, but of course, this is the nature of it. So there you go, for our geography that we've actually learnt, I think in the past times from primary school like ours, there's always a tributary, there's a confluence, a delta, all these are related to rivers. The first time we were actually on the Zambezi River. In fact, we came from Kafue River and then of course came at a joint where these two rivers kind of interact. It's called a confluence. So Zambezi River, mighty as it is, has got three confluences that we actually have to talk about. The first one is Zambezi and Kafue. Now this is the interaction of water, you know, I don't know if it's spilling or boiling down, at the confluence of Zambezi and Chongwe River. This river here stretches and goes all the way, that's Chongwe. I don't know if my directions are quite correct here. We're coming from the western side to the eastern side. So the river flows in that particular sense and then Chongwe draws in that particular order, right? So I don't know if at all the spill of this splash here has Chongwe water or Zambezi water here. But the gentleman here is actually one of the people around from Conservation Lower Zambezi. And another, I think, peculiar aspect is that that's Lower Zambezi National Park, but of course in the GMA side, which is Game Management Area, there's the interaction of animals and human beings. Yeah. And then the other side is
Lower Zambezi National Park, strictly only for wildlife and just few lodges that are actually in the park. So there's no human settlements in this side of the park here. Strictly just for game viewing and few camps that we have in the park. So
there are camps present.
There are camps present in the park. Exactly. Yeah. Structure just like you are seeing on this other camp here, but this is sort of like the boundary now that demarcates our Lower Zambezi National Park strictly for lodges and game viewing drives and Chiao Game Management Area. So this is sort of like the boundary now that demarcates the two.
So necessarily here people can live and strictly people cannot live.
Cannot live in the park, yeah.
So you live there at your own peril.
Yeah. Yeah, all you have is just lodges anyway. If you wanted to come in as a tourist, you want to lodge in at one of the camps in the park, this is the area where you can go, but also even up in the GMA, which you have camps that are there where human settlements are.
Right, so your interaction as Lower Conservation is on the other side?
It's on the other side of the GMA, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Where human beings, they don't cross into here to go and fish?
Well, we do have people coming in because wildlife is actually found on both sides here. It's GMA and also, I mean, in the park. And you know, with poachers, it's everywhere. As long as these resources are found in the park and the GMA, definitely they'll come in for them. We've had people coming into the park for poaching also as the same in the GMA. Yeah.
But are you telling me that animal population is, what's the ratio like? If one really has to find animals that come for game viewing, you best go into the national park itself, or you can still stay in the GMA?
It's sort of like a
ratio of animals.
It's sort of like tricky because they sort of like cross over from just the park and the GMA, but even across Zimbabwe. You know, today you'd find the same breeding head in the park. Tomorrow it's actually back in the GMA. Today you'd find this group of lions in the park, and then tomorrow it's actually in the GMA. So they cross over. So it's sort of like they're everywhere. They're found in both park and GMA.
So there's no family of animals living there and here?
No, there's nothing like that. They just cross over. I mean, I'll give you one good example. I think with elephants during farming season, because of demand for crops and food, they would actually move much into the GMA and to the fields where people are growing maize and sorghum and stuff, because there'll be more sort of like food in the communities than what they would find in the GMA. So you'd find quite a number of elephants would move into the GMA. Right. At some stage again they would get back into the park. So they don't have boundaries. They cross over from both GMA park and also across Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you talk about education, there you go. I don't need to be a teacher for you. This is your 169. It comes in the stretch of your geography. This is your chance and opportunity and time to see what a confluence looks like. The people's around, the water splashing. There you go, the 169. So that's all. Business is done at Conservation Lower Zambezi, and of course thanks to everybody around that has actually been with us today. It's been quite an experience finding out the origins of the confluence of the Chongwe and Zambezi River, and of course getting to a mini drive, but of course certainly getting to the location of the GMA and of course the non-GMA right in Lower Zambezi National Park. What about next time? Thank you so much. And of course, certainly going to be on the 169 all time, every time. Bye-bye.